Hello everybody and welcome back. In the last video we generated passwords, and in this video we're going to use our generated password in our DB and compare it with our post request to authenticate. So first we need to go to our main file here, and remember in the earlier video we had created our database, we passed it into our server. Well, now we need to pass that into our route, because in our login route right up here, remember we didn't there's no access to the database here. There's no way to get to the database, so we need to somehow pass DB into this function right here. And earlier we had set up our router in a way that made it nice and easy to do that, so let's go ahead and do that. So in our server here we do have access to our database right here, but we don't have access to it in our router. So let's go ahead and pass that into our router like so. We'll take this line right so, we'll save. It's going to freak out and say, hey, our router doesn't accept that argument. Well, now it's going to. So let's go to our new router up here. We'll pass that in, save, and then on our get routes, which is where we create our routes, we're going to pass that in. So let's do DB to here. Let's go to our routes up here, save that, our routes up here, get routes, we're going to pass that in. And then we're going to take our DB, we're going to pass it into health and login. So now I need to go into both login and health and pass in DB pointer xorm.engine, and then do that same thing on our health route here, in case we need it in the future. Okay, so now in our login function we actually have access to the DB. Well, let's go ahead and pass it into V1 as well, to V1 routes as well, for later on. So go to our router here, we have our get routes function, like so. We'll pass in our DB into our health function. For the V1 routes, we'll grab DB, go to here, pass it in as well. And then in our actual routes down here, our router down here where we grab our V1 routes, we also need to pass in DB here as well. There you go. Okay. Now everything should just run. Let's do a quick test to make sure, because our editor is giving us the okay, but let's always make sure. Go run main, and we're good. Okay. All right, so in our login function up here, we need to have some sort of model to know how to map database variable, database. Oh my gosh, my brain's not working. Database properties in a row in a table to a model in Go. So how you do that normally is you use structs to do that. So we're going to create a new folder in our models called users. We're going to create a file called users.go, and let's create a package called users. We'll create a type user struct. We're also going to take a type of users with a slice of user, like so. So ID, and that's going to let's do ID int. We'll do 64 for now, and then we're going to do a tag, and I'll explain tags here in a second. And this is going to be ID, and then we need to do email. That's type string. Xorm email, and then password string Xorm password. Okay, so let's create a quick comment here. Users slice of user. It's a useless comment, but the editor complains. So user a model of user from the DB. Okay, so what's going on here? Why are we doing this weird tag here? What that's doing, if you haven't already guessed, is mapping this lowercase value to this uppercase value. It's telling Xorm, hey, when you pull from the DB, look for some property named ID here and put it into this variable here. That's what it's doing. So anyway, let's go ahead and use this. So we'll go into login up here, and we need to include our models here. So say users, and this, by the way, is an alias. So anytime you pull a package from somewhere, you can alias that package using this syntax here. GitHub.com. Oh my gosh, learning, and then it was project, right? Okay, and then API, and then models, and then users. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll try and find that user from this passed-in email. So the very first thing we need to do is check to see if these don't have links. If we don't have links, we need to throw an error back. So we'll say if length of email is equal to 0, or length of password is equal to 0, then we need to return an error. So return, and then we'll say w dot write, and then we need to pass in. Okay, we need to pass in what we're writing back. Oh, it's not that. Hold on a second. It is. Hold on a second. Sorry, I had to talk to my kids. Okay, right. Oh, no. We need to do http dot error and pass in the writer. And then we need to pass in our error message, which in this case is going to be an email and password are required. And then the actual codes, http dot malformed request, or let's see, let's do should be, we'll do status. That would be let's do we don't want to do an unauthorized. We want to do let's do, it's not an internal server error because there's no error. It's going to be a malformed request, and I'm trying to think of where that was at. Oh, bad request. Oh, I was looking for malformed request. There we go. Okay, so for bad request. Okay, so now we know that if it is passed in, we do have at least some email of some sort and a password of some sort. I need to go into the DB and create that. Oh, it got rid of my user here. We're gonna copy this here, go back, and then we'll go forward. Okay, so that was Control Z to go back, and then Control Shift Z to, or hold on. There we go. There we go. To go forward. So Control Z to go back, Control Shift Z to go forward. And then we'll say users. Say oh, we probably should create a actual function for this as well, huh? So let's go ahead and do that. We'll say we'll create an index file, index.go. Now package users, function index, and that's going to accept db xorm.engine, and it's going to return a slice of users. So we'll say users, and an error if there's an error. And then we need to pass in our find by function as well. So we'll say find by, and that will be type of user. And then we'll say error equal to, our session is equal to db dot, let's see, we want to have a dummy function here. So we can create some, so we'll say we're 1 equals 1. And then we'll say if length find by dot email is greater than 0, then we'll say session is equal to session dot where email is equal to the first pass parameter. And then we'll say error is equal to session dot find, and we'll pass in our users object like so. And then we'll say if there's an error is not equal to nil, then we'll return. I think it's gonna say, yeah, it should work. And then otherwise we'll just return. And the reason why we do it this way is so that way we can, if we do some processing after we grab the data, you have some room to do that processing right here. That's why we do that. Hold on, I got to talk to my kids. Sorry about that. Okay. So index gets a slice of users based on the past parameters. Okay. One thing we also want to do too as well is we're actually going to make this a pointer. And in doing that, then we can pass in a nil value and not have to worry about whether there is any data there. So say if find by is equal to nil, then we'll say find by is equal to our users. There we go. Can use literal users as type user in assignment. Oh, user. Oops. There we go. That basically creates an empty object, so we can do these checks and whatnot here without having to check for nil because it's a pointer. Okay, and that should be everything. So that's the only real parameter we're checking is email. We don't have to check for anything else. Also, you can use the same function to grab all the users. So if you don't pass in an email, you can just get all the users in the system, or you can pass in an email and get users that only match that with that email. Okay. So then we can do this. We can say users error is equal to users.index. We'll pass in the DB, and then we'll pass in a reference to a user object that has an email of email. And then it should just complain that yep, that not declared and not used. That's totally fine. Then we say if error is not equal to nil, we're going to say http.error, pass in the writer, and we'll use error.error, http dot, let's do, this actually is going to be an internal server error, because the only time we're going to get an error from the DB is if there's something like a database not being connected. Like that probably won't ever really be an error. It's, it can happen, but the way we write this, it's pretty unlikely, because we're going to panic in the main if the DB is not connected, but this will at least handle it in case there is an error. And then what we'll do is we'll say if length of users is equal to 0, then we can, we need to add a return here. Return. And then we can use the same sort of thing we had up here. We can say http dot error, where we say user or password combination not found, and then we'll do, this time we can do unauthorized because it actually is unauthorized. And then we also need to check, now we need to, so okay, let's just test this real quick before we continue on. We need to continue and add in a password check as well, because just because they passed in the correct email obviously doesn't mean that they are authenticated. We need to do our user password library to check that password as well. But let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and verify this. So say write. We'll just write back the data. So we'll say byte. Actually, we don't need marshal JSON. We'll do that here. We'll just marshal JSON real quick. So we'll say packet. Oops. Packet error is equal to JSON.marshal, like so. I'm gonna pass in the users. Say if error is not equal to nil, then we'll go through. We'll just steal this one again because this is basically the same issue here. This is a kind of external library. If there's an error, it is going to be an internal error, and I'll take this packet and we'll write it back like so. Did it include JSON? Okay. There we go. So let's just go ahead and test this real quick. Let's say go run main. Wow, we wrote a lot of code and no errors. Good. Okay. Let's go ahead. Oh my gosh, I'm having a hard time here. Let's go ahead and curl against this. So it's going to actually be a post request, right? So curl, so dash or X, and then it's post. And then the data we're passing in, it's going to be an email of nick@mail.com. And then we're also going to do password, it doesn't matter, right for right now, test. That's localhost 8000 with a route of auth login. An email and password are required. So what did I do wrong here? Is that it? It's not. There can't be a comma. There's no way it's a comma. Nick@mail and email and password are required. So let's go ahead and log print email and log.println password. Save that. Run it again. Oh, right, there we go. And then yeah, I'm not using the right delimiter. It is. I thought that's what it was. And percent symbol. Oh, let's just look it up. Oh no, it is. So why is it not grabbing password? Oh, I have an extra S in there. Oh my gosh. Okay. Extra S. There we go. Table Golang user doesn't exist. Oh, you know what? I'm actually glad we encountered this error because I forgot to do one more thing with the users model. So in here you have to tell Xorm what table you're using. And how you do that is user methods. Is methods on the model. So you say function user and then table name. It's going to return a string return users. So what's going on here is when you pass in this user into the query up here, see how, so we're using find by, we're passing this users model up here, which is a type of slice of users. It's a slice of users, so it's using this struct here. It takes the base name of this struct as the table name unless you tell it something different. So here we're telling it that the table name is actually users, not user. So we'll say table name sets the correct table name in the DB. Okay, and now it should work. We should be able to get a slice back. And there you go. You see we got a JSON array, or slice in Golang, of the data back. So that means it's good. Our DB is working just right. We'll go into the login function. Let's remove some of this logging because we don't actually need that. This video is already getting very, very, very long. So I think I'm just going to split this into multiple videos. So in the next video, what we're going to do is we're actually going to add a little bit more logic in here, like, for example, checking the password that's passed in. And then also we're going to add in our token in the video after that. So thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time.